everybody, it's Ed Dale here, and welcome to the AdSkills Pro podcast. And in this season, it's been a lot of fun because we've been talking to people who we've had on our podcast before, and we're sort of catching up, and we're seeing where they're at now, and also looking at some of the things that are coming down the pipe in terms of what they're excited about, and what do they see as potential challenges for media buyers going forward. And today I'm super thrilled to have Mitch Adams on the line. Mitch, welcome to the Pro League podcast. Hey,
Thank you.
Can you just, to refresh people's memories, can you just give us a little, tell us about who your agency is and who are you working with? What do you specialize in?
So my agency is called M3 Traffic, and who I've begun to specialize in lately is, it's the most random thing, but is actually helping companies recruit truck drivers. And I have done a variety of things from small local mom and pop shops up to, I worked with ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson for a while, running large scale direct response marketing campaigns. But kind of the niche I've found my way into is mostly truck driver recruiting.
Yeah. Mitch, you might know, I'm not 100%, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that in the United States, truck driver is has the highest number of people employed. Am I off base on that?
I would not be surprised because there's a lot of them. I've not read that statistic personally.
Yeah, I know it's up there. I know it's up there. And wow, so that is a fascinating niche. So
yeah.
when you're thinking about targeting for truck drivers, how do you go about thinking about targeting for what seems to be it seems to me to be a very vertical niche, but then truck drivers have all sorts of interests and stuff. How do you go about doing that?
So the network that I specialize in is Facebook, and that's where I've been for a long time.
Yeah.
And for those of us that are familiar with Facebook, then let's see, when was it? Probably late 2019, they implemented and started enforcing the special ad category.
Mm-hmm.
So before the special ad category enforcement, where you have to tell them that you're targeting for employment purposes,
For recruiting.
then yep, then you could target all sorts of things. There's lots of random things like trucking magazines and just the interest trucking and all sorts of things related to trucking companies and like the actual manufacturers like Freightliner, Mack, Volvo, all of those big truck companies, and all of the magazines, all of the radio stations, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Then they took most of those away. And so I basically have three interests, and they're just like related to logistics and stuff.
Yeah.
And what I found is that I think the reason that it still is successful is because the pixel I have for even a new ad account, then I have the interests and the ads dialed in enough that it can train the pixel quickly. But on the existing ad accounts, then the pixel is smart enough that it does pretty well.
Yeah. So all that information is still there, and Facebook wants to deliver the right traffic to you. You just don't have the exposure to it. You said you can't pull the metaphorical levers yourself.
Right.
With that as a process. And how have you found that? Because by the way, while this is like you've been dealing with this for a year or so now, spoiler alert to anybody listening to this, it's coming your way soon. So how did you find that was the using the pixel, were you consistently beating it, or do you find now you trust the pixel and the pixel is finding you the right type of people? Take us through that process of all of a sudden from having your hands on the levers to having to trust the pixel. Talk us a little bit about that journey.
So I got when the announcement came out, I was like, oh crap, well, this is the end of that. That was fun while it lasted. Which by that point I had only been doing it for like 6 months, maybe less. because I don't remember exactly when that made that change.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I was very worried. I was like, oh crap, this isn't gonna work. Because also I was targeting 21 to 64, but with the
Hmm.
special ad category, you have to do 18 to 65 plus,
Yep.
and male, female, and everything. You target
Hmm.
basically everybody.
Yep.
Um, so I was really worried, but it literally made almost no difference.
Interesting.
And so, especially now, I've had my hands tied in that way for so long that I don't really think about it. I
Yeah,
just
it's not
use the
become.
pixel.
It's very like I'm so glad we brought this up because uh as everybody listening to this podcast is well aware, right, targeting tools are being removed not just for job categories but for all sorts of things. So having that in place, is there anything in the like in terms of the pixel training that you see people doing that's a bit of a mistake, or think stuff something that you've learned in terms of training the pixel that you found is really important to look at?
So I'm sure a lot of people on this podcast have heard this, but one thing you can do is upload previous data.
Mm,
So I have a very large list of the ideal customer,
yep.
and so I can upload that and just get things started.
Yeah.
Um, in other, it's harder in other niches where I haven't where I don't have the data. I can't
Mm,
kickstart the pixel like that. So you just have to
yeah.
go back to the basics of testing and trying to start getting the conversions
Yeah.
and doing it that way.
It was interesting. I was on a call with Justin Brook just yesterday, and we were just talking about how things are old or new again. In that, like, if you've got an email list, if you've got a phone number list, boy oh boy, is that useful. And
Yeah.
so many uses, both old style and new style. So interesting. That's probably an interesting place to sort of look at that. One of the things that we were really interested to hear from you is sort of what what are you looking at? What are you looking at that's exciting you or really interesting you for the upcoming year? And maybe, and it's up to you which one you want to choose first. What are sort of what are some of the maybe potential challenges you see on the horizon?
Let's see. So I guess there's two categories of like what I'm looking at for the upcoming year. One side is media buying.
Mm,
The other side is like my agency, the business model.
okay, yeah.
Uh, so media buying challenges that we see coming up is obviously iOS 14.
Hmm.
Although as I've looked into it, es- especially in this niche, then it's really
Mm,
pretty basic. We're tracking one conversion.
yep.
Um, those conversions are still going to be tracking, and actually retargeting is the biggest thing that's going to be affected. And
Mm,
I've tried my hardest on retargeting with this, and it doesn't work.
yeah.
And so, that's being taken away partially with iOS
Mm,
14, right? Is the
yep.
ability to retarget, or the same abilities to retarget,
Yes.
right? You can change and modify it, but just the old strategies that we've been doing to retargeting, it didn't work anyway. So
Mm,
um, that's not going to change. But still challenges with all of those changes happening.
yep.
The other challenge that I run into that I'm finding is just Facebook is a limited platform. They do have control. They like to randomly just shut things down, and so that's a challenge. And so from a media buying perspective, I'm looking at expanding this to YouTube as well to just have
Mm,
another source for leads,
yep.
just so that if something happens to Facebook, then we can diversify and do that. And I'm also looking at other platforms specific to that niche that
Yeah.
aren't really relevant to anyone else.
So let's
So
take let's look at sort of iOS 14. What actions have you been taking as an agency to prepare yourself for the changes? What is there anything that you've changed, or like what are you doing in terms of prep for these changes that are coming up?
so I'm really just trying to learn about it. And
Mm,
to be honest, I'm probably not like ahead of the curve here. So
yep.
in learning about it, just
Mm.
because I think it has a smaller effect on what I'm doing here.
Because
But
you're already in the job restriction category, right? You're used to
Yeah,
dealing with a lot of constraint, and
yeah.
and and, and that's actually an interesting thing. Like for that market, is it heavily mobile or is it desktop, or what do you tend to find? Is there a mixture of both?
I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked at the specific stats recently,
Yeah,
but from what I remember looking at, then it is heavily mobile.
yeah,
So there will be some effects there,
yeah,
but um, I don't. Like I said,
yeah.
as I've talked to my reps and stuff, then they're still going to be able to track conversions, especially like so the preparations I'm making right now are
Sure.
trying to figure out verifying domains
Yeah,
and all of that stuff. And yeah, the attribution windows being shorter.
yeah,
Um, I've looked at the attribution back to 28 day, and like
yeah,
almost all of them are coming in the first 7 days anyway. So
yeah,
again, that you kind of with this, then you opt in or you don't. You don't like
yeah,
save it for later. It's not a high
yeah.
ticket purchase.
Yeah, as a direct marketer, I find the concept of a 28-day conversion window completely offensive to me. I know there are reasons. Don't email. Don't I know that I know there are reasons for it. I know there are certain industries, long decision cycles, etc., etc. But it offends me. Okay. It offends me. Like if they haven't done something within 7 days, don't take the credit. Right. So
Yeah.
anyway, I digress. What do you, in terms of your agency, you mentioned things that like obviously starting to look at YouTube, like diversifying network sources. What do you see as some of the opportunities coming up in what are some of the things that are exciting you that are really interesting you?
Yeah. So the first one is diversifying to YouTube, trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then the other project that I'm working on is kind of transitioning myself from just really a freelancer. That's what I've been doing for
Mm,
many years, but making the transition to more of a business owner, overseeing the strategy, but having people handle the day to day pushing the buttons.
yeah.
Because it's, pushing the buttons, if you know the right buttons to push, a monkey can do it, right?
Mm, mm, mm,
I guess and I'm probably slower to do this than a lot of
yeah.
people have, but that's kind of the big exciting thing for me this year is trying to more automate my business and
Yeah.
become more of the business owner and not just the freelancer.
Yeah, yeah. What are the challenges that you see for that? What's what's the area that like maybe like concern may be the wrong word, but like in terms of going from freelance to that, what areas are you concerned about?
I think for a long time, then I had the thought like, oh, if I hire somebody, then I'll make less money, or stuff like that,
Yes.
or or having the very very false mindset of I'm the only one that can do this. Like, well,
Yeah.
really, I'm really not that smart. So there are other people that can do this. So that was a big thing. But then the thing that I'm working through now is how can I trust other people? One, but
Mm,
then also just having the systems in place to where I don't have to spend half an hour on the phone every time that a change needs to be made, which the
yeah.
change that needed to be made I could have done within a half an hour. So
Yeah.
trying to set up those systems to where I can
Yeah.
trust that the stuff is going to get done,
Hmm.
and I don't. I still want to monitor it. I still want to keep
Yeah.
tabs on it,
Hmm.
but not spend just as much time as I am now, and make
Yeah.
less money. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the the classics in terms of a challenge. What are you looking at any particular sort of methodologies or management for doing that? Are you using anything that's sort of guiding you through this process?
So to help me find the people, then I'm working through AdSkills, the matchmaker service thing you have, to talk to
Yes.
some people
Yep.
as one option, as one avenue that I'm
Yep.
exploring. Another avenue that I'm exploring is I ran across a Facebook ad from this guy named John Jonas, and he has this whole training of how to hire Filipino workers. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm exploring that as an avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which it's kind of two totally different avenues. The ad
Yeah.
skills is like very educated, like mindful, critical
Mm-hmm.
thinkers, versus
Yeah.
the
Certified.
Filipino is like they literally push the buttons is all they do.
Yeah, and you do the and it's all about, and I think one of the things that when people start bringing on people for the first time, there is a misconception that your life gets immediately easier. In fact, it's the opposite, right? For
It's
the
been crazy.
first 8 weeks, right, you're actually doing double the work, right? Because you're embedding new people in the team. So you have, not only are you having to make sure everything gets done, you're observing people getting done and you're having to correct and so on. But putting that effort in, in those first 8 weeks in the onboarding of people is that's where then you start to see the payoffs, then
Yeah.
after the event. And one great little piece of advice that we often try to do, particularly when it comes to juniors. And by the way, we love you juniors listening to this podcast. That whole monkey crack was not deliberately talking to you, but you have to start somewhere, right? And it's a great idea, in terms of, like, if you're going to hire one, hire two, hire a buddy, because particularly when you're looking at maybe out of country type hiring situations as well, where, because if you're going to train and if you put all your eggs into one basket, and then for whatever happens, the eggs break or the basket breaks, then that's a challenge. But if you've got two people, one, they can help each other. You've got that sounding board. And it's also great because if you're going to go to all the trouble of onboarding, um, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is you have two amazing employees that you don't want to get rid of because they're incredibly productive, so you can take on more work. So that's something that is particularly sort of interesting in terms of
That's
when you,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good thought. Um, I'll have to consider that.
Yeah, just a little. I know that it's something that when we've looked at doing it, and when people hire, and Justin's always talking about this in terms of understanding what you're getting to, in terms of, expecting new media buyers to be all across creative. And I know you're not doing this, Mitch, but this is something that we see, particularly when people from outside of the media buying world who aren't like yourself, who are a freelancer, where they start hiring them and they become, they expect them to do creative and track stats and come up with innovative campaigns. And they're just like everybody else. They're white belts or yellow belts. They're not black belts day one. So it makes a big difference. Hey, Mitch, tell us about, in terms of in terms of the thing, like from when you talked last time to now, what are some of the key lessons that you've learnt over the sort of the past year or so? What are some of the things that have been really good learning experiences for you?
So especially over the journey in AdSkills, then before AdSkills, then I worked for a previous agency, worked for another agency, and they had
Mm,
very small clients with a lot of other things that were broken in their business other than traffic.
yeah.
And I'm sure everybody listening here, they know that like a whole business, there's more to it than just media buying and just traffic. Like that's a small piece of it, an important piece, but a small
Mm,
piece. And
yes.
so I realized as I come into AdSkills that just looking at the steps of the process. So just a quick breakdown of the steps. You have the ad, you have the click, you have then depending on your funnel or website, you have looking at the website, looking at the product, or becoming a lead or whatever. You have all of these steps, and just really looking at if you see that the campaign's not working. If the campaign's working, that's fantastic. But if the campaign is not working, then just trying to figure out, okay, which step is it? Is it the ad, which has to do with my audience and my creative and my text and headline and all of that good stuff that we talk about in media buying?
Yeah.
Or is all of that working good? I'm getting the clicks, but then they get to the website and something's breaking down over there. And then depending on your position in the involvement, then instructing them like, hey, your website is terrible. You need to fix it if you want this to work.
Mm,
Or say it in a nicer way. Or if you're working on that part of it, if you're like doing the complete lead generation, and so you also control the landing page, then make tweaks to try to improve the conversion rate on the landing page. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned. And then I guess the other part is just testing along with that, testing your ad, testing the headline, testing each piece of the ad, just to try to get some incremental improvements over time.
Yeah. 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 Those little 1% improvements and increments add up. Which is a big thing. Hey, Mitch, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. If people want to reach out, and before I get you to tell everybody where to get in touch with you, I will point out if you're watching this on YouTube, all of Mitch's contact details will be in the description below. If you're listening to this on your podcast player of choice, then of course in the show notes section, we'll make sure you've got all of Mitch's contact details as well. So where's the best place for people to reach out to you, Mitch?
Best place is probably email. So you can just email me at mitch@m3traffic.com.
Fantastic. Beautiful. Mitch at m3traffic.com. Hey, Mitch, thanks very much for joining us again on the podcast. I am super tempted to say to sign off, keep on trucking.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much, mate.